Welcome to the Gut Girl Podcast. Okay, so we're here today with Dr. William Davis. And if you don't know already from our last episode together, he's back. I have more questions. I'm really grateful that you're back here, Bill. And if you don't know, Dr. William Davis is not only a cardiologist, but a #1 New York Times bestselling author and just a microbiome pioneer, really. It's really exciting ideas and there's just so many things to learn from this man. So welcome, Bill. Welcome back.
Thank you, Georgia May. I'm here to support missions like yours.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I mean, a lot of the things that you've talked about have changed the way I view my health. So it's quite, it's been huge for me. And I think one of the big things is the misconceptions. Like I'm thinking about the common misconceptions you talk about in your books, like Super Body, the recent book. And I'm wondering if we could go there, like maybe as a place to start, like what, from your point of view, are the common things that people assume would impact, say, like, your heart health or your weight, but then you've come to understand is not the case. Like, I feel like there's a lot there, like, I might be told, eat the low-fat thing or, avoid fats or, like, those are the ones that come to my mind. But what are the important, misconceptions from your point of view that drive you insane, that you're like, that's not true. I know that's not true. Like, yeah.
Well, we've spent half a century, Georgia May, wasting our time with false and misleading concepts like cholesterol. So the whole concept of cholesterol got its start over 50 years ago. A lot of it done at the National Institutes of Health,
right,
and Bethesda, Maryland, a U.S. federally funded research organization, and well-intended scientists, Georgia May. These are not people. These are not fakes. These are not fraudsters. These are scientists, and they wanted a way to quantify, count the number of fat-carrying particles in the bloodstream that cause heart disease. So one of the basic concepts a lot of people have a hard time with is fats don't circulate in the bloodstream on their own. They can't.
That's
right.
So
cholesterol's a fat. Triglycerides are fats. Think about your salad dressing. If you have oil and vinegar, vinegar and water, of course, they separate, right? Oil on top, vinegar and water on the bottom. You shake it, and it mixes, and then what? Seconds later, it's separated again. And the principle is that oils coalesce. And so if oils were allowed to float freely in the bloodstream, they would coalesce. Well, if that happened in your bloodstream, in your capillaries and small vessels, your organs would die within moments. Your brain would die. Your liver would die. So it'd be fatal.
Bad news, yeah.
So we've evolved such that the only way for the body to transact fats in the bloodstream is fats must be coupled to something that makes it soluble in an aqueous or water environment. That's what blood is. If you take the red blood cells out, you have plasma. It's essentially a water-based, an aqueous environment. So the liver, our very intelligent liver, packages fats onto lipoproteins, fat-carrying proteins. It's those proteins that solubilize or make soluble the fats. And that allows your body to transport fats all over. Well, one of the most important processes in the liver to deal with fats is a process, and forgive me for this terminology, liver de novo lipogenesis. All that means is the liver makes new, de novo makes new fats, lipogenesis. But what does it do to make those fats? It takes carbohydrates and sugars, not fats. Fats are processed in a completely different way. But it takes carbohydrates and sugars, such as the amylopectin A, unique to wheat and grains, or sugars, fructose, sucrose, glucose. So liver's very good at this, taking carbohydrates and sugars, converting them to triglycerides. Triglycerides are fats. But the liver can't release those triglycerides directly into the bloodstream because they would coalesce. So it packages them into a class of particles that are very fat-rich called VLDL, very low density, because they're fats. They're very low, like the salad oil goes to the top. Very low density lipoproteins, VLDL. VLDL is known to be, well established, a direct cause for heart disease, coronary disease. And there's a sequence of enzymatic remodeling steps that converts the VLDL to small, dense LDL. That's the cause of heart disease.
This is what I read
Now,
in your
what
book.
those
Yes,
NIH
the
well, what those
small.
NIH researchers were trying to do in 1958, Georgia May, 1958, they would spin your plasma down and it would layer out. Very low density at the top, high density, heaviest at the bottom, medium density, they called LDL, low density, in the middle.
Right.
Well, in 1958, 1960, how do you count? You can't even, they're so small, you can't even see them with a microscope.
Right.
Well, they reasoned, and kind of clever for its time, when people had black and white TVs, there's no such thing as a perfect computer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, so crude technology. They said, well, we can't really directly count them. Let's pick an ingredient that we know are shared by all those different particles. So they could have chosen triglycerides. They could have chosen one of those proteins like apoprotein B. They chose cholesterol. So cholesterol is nothing more than a crude dipstick for those layers.
Okay. I mean, because I'm trying to, and forgive me, I'm shamefully poor at understanding the medical lingo, but bear with me. I'm going to get there. I just want to understand how that links to, you talk about endotoxemia. Is that right? Like when it comes to the way in which the gut health links to the heart health. Could you unpack that a bit for me? What is this endotoxemia process? And is it, the leaky gut? That's just all very fascinating to me, but I'm yet to wrap my head around it. It's a little bit of a minefield for me.
Let me bore you silly for another couple minutes.
Yes, please.
So what if Georgia May goes to her primary care doctor and she says to you, Georgia May, your LDL cholesterol is 180 milligrams per deciliter, which is high.
Okay, that's bad. Yep.
That would be high.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell us about you? Well, in other words, does it tell us anything about your body's physiology, its health? Well, it tells us your total cholesterol would be high because LDL and total cholesterol are calculated from each other. It doesn't really help. It would tell you that the apoprotein B, because there's one apoprotein B per LDL particle, would be high-ish. But that's all we know about you. What if I said, Georgia May, we did a lipoprotein analysis, the actual particles, we counted them, and looked at their size and other characteristics, which you can do very easily. I've been doing it for 35 years.
Okay. Is it like a blood test, or how do you actually test for that? Is it like a blood test?
So there's blood tests, three different methods.
Mm-hmm.
The most common method today in the U.S., I think it's going to take some time to get other parts of the world, is nuclear magnetic resonance, or an MRI device. It's take your plasma, put it in a magnetic field, and then each lipoprotein class emits a certain signal, and it tells you how many particles, what size.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and these are how many LDL small dense particles. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah.
So, for instance, we'll say, George May, you have 1,800 nanomoles per liter, particle count per liter of small dense LDL. Let's say that's true for you. What do I now know about you? Well, I know that your liver is engaged in excessive quantities of liver de novo lipogenesis, making triglycerides, making VLDL that leads to small LDL. I know that if you did a conventional cholesterol panel, your triglycerides would be high, your HDL would be very low, HDL particles would be abnormally small and thereby non-protective. Your insulin resistance is high. Your fasting glucose will be high. Your fasting insulin will be high. Your hemoglobin A1C will be high. Your blood pressure is going to be high. Your liver tests, like your AST, ALT, will be high, signaling liver damage, fatty liver. We know that your arteries are abnormally constricted, endothelial dysfunction. We know that you have the glycocalyx lining your arteries and controlling tone has been damaged. And we know that you likely have endotoxemia, driving those processes, amplifying it.
Okay. So you know a lot, much more from that than from
you can see.
Typical, is that right? From typical measures.
Well, now I know a whole bunch about Georgia May. In other words, it's not something in isolation like LDL cholesterol that causes heart disease. It's small, dense LDL as the tip of an iceberg of a whole universe of abnormal phenomena that involve inflammation, insulin resistance, endotoxemia, liver, all those things together, that's what creates heart disease. Yet they're fiddling over there. Nero's fiddling, telling you got to reduce your cholesterol with a statin drug and reduce your saturated fat while you're developing heart. That's why in the U.S., hospitals add $100 million new wings for cardiac care because the conventional efforts at preventing heart disease don't work. And so heart disease in the U.S., I think this is true more or less, but it's so profiteering here. Heart disease remains the number one source of money making, of making money in the U.S., despite all the talk about reducing cholesterol. 80 million Americans, that's bigger than the whole population of Australia. 80 million Americans take statin cholesterol drugs, yet there's been no meaningful reduction in cardiac events like heart attack or sudden cardiac death, because that's not the cause of heart disease. It's a profitable, you may have heard this, that the statin drugs to reduce cholesterol have now crossed, last few months ago, just crossed over $1 trillion in revenue. Unimaginable, right?
I mean, it's interesting. When you put it like that, it sort of leaves you going, well, hold on, what we're doing is not working very well, is it? What most people are doing to look after their heart health is not particularly working if it's the number one health condition in America, for example. Is that how you see it? Are you like, well, it's,
Well, there are now 60 human clinical trials showing us that it's small, dense LDL that is the driver of coronary, coupled with all those other factors, because they all act in concert. Well, why, if that's true, why are they still prattling on about cholesterol? Because they make a lot of money at it.
Yep.
When you start to understand, no, it's about small, dense LDL, liver de novo lipogenesis, carbohydrate consumption, sugar consumption. It's about, you realize the whole thing, the whole house of cards is built on nutrition. Everything is completely correctable with nutritional strategies. And there's no opportunity to make a few $1 billion here and there. So I wouldn't say it's squashed. They're just indifferent. Pharma is indifferent. My colleagues largely, not all, but many of them are indifferent because there's no pot of gold in all this. But that's the tragedy. If the answer for put a stop to heart disease has already been worked out, we should talk about it. But there's no money. That's the problem.
And so then if you're someone listening to this and going, oh, okay, well, I'd like to know my the state of my LDL particles in my body. I mean, and you mentioned the test. Could you mention that again? What would be the standard process of trying to explore that? If with your cardiologist or your GP or
I can't speak for how available it is in Australia.
Oh yes, okay.
But I can tell you in North America, more so in the U.S., it's a struggle also in Canada, and it's certainly a struggle in the U.K. But there's 3 general methods to identify, to study lipoproteins, the actual causes of heart disease. One way would be what the NIH people did: spin down your plasma, layer it out, and then there are ways to study it using modern methods. Another way is to put your plasma into a gel and then pass a current, an electrical current, and those particles will migrate depending on density and charge. That's called gel electrophoresis. Kind of troublesome. It's not done much anymore. So the gold standard has proven to be nuclear magnetic resonance. Sounds complicated. It is kind of complicated, but the actual performance of the test is very simple. Dr. James Ottvost invented this method, 40 years ago.
Okay.
Putting your plasma in an MRI or NMR device, and various lipoproteins behave differently in a powerful magnetic field. And so it's a quick, easy, and very reliable way. One thing you don't want to do is do a test that varies, is not reliable. This test is solid, rock solid, reliable. You do it on Monday, you get a result. Same result Tuesday, same result, and it's dirt cheap. It's more than cholesterol testing. It's around $90 or so, but it's not unreachable, and you get this invaluable information.
Okay.
But a lot of the process circles around this whole, I wish there was a better name for it, but it's liver de novo lipogenesis. Your liver's capacity to convert carbs and sugars to triglycerides and thereby all those particles. Well, all modern life amps up that process hugely. Insulin resistance In the
Right.
US, 2/3 of adults have insulin resistance. Inflammation. The gastrointestinal tract is filled with microbes, and the modern gastrointestinal tract even more so because fecal microbes in most Americans have now ascended into the 24 feet of small intestine, very permeable. Well, the venous drainage for the small intestine and colon is in a part of the venous system called the portal vein that drains directly to the liver. So your poor liver is taking a beating from the microbes in your GI tract. And one of the effects of that portal vein endotoxemia is to amplify liver de novo lipogenesis. So if you're giving people a
Okay.
stupid statin drug to reduce this fake marker called LDL cholesterol, you've done nothing to address the mix of factors that lead to coronary disease.
Ah,
And the great thing about this, Georgia May, is that it's a little bit complicated. It's more complicated than take this drug, right?
yeah, yeah.
But if you understand these basic principles, you have the key to, in the great majority of people, complete eradication of risk for heart disease. But no one will profit from it.
Exactly. I think that there's a lot of confusion around, well, then what would eating, in a more informed way that helps your gut do for like heart health? Like I'm wondering if we could talk a bit about SIBO, like leaky gut, like why that's a problem. I think a lot of people don't even know what SIBO is, right? Like I learned that from you. Like, could you tell me a bit about SIBO and, is SIBO sort of separate to leaky gut or sort of linked, and how that extends to then increase your risk of small LDL particles and endotoxemia and...
So, as modern people, we've all been widely overexposed to antibiotics. In the
Right?
U.S., by age 40, the average American has gotten 30 courses of antibiotics.
Wow, 30 by 40.
E-
Wow.
Every day, every
Gee.
day, 650,000 prescriptions are written for antibiotics every day in the U.S.
Gee.
Children, for every 1,000 children, over 1,300 prescriptions are written every year for. So there's wild exposure to antibiotics. There's other things with antibiotic properties. Glyphosate, the herbicide, is
Yes.
ubiquitous. It's in your food, water, hair, everywhere. Is also an antibiotic.
Oh, that's an antibiotic.
Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
mhm.
Mm.
Preservatives in processed food has antibiotic properties. Emulsifying agents like in ice cream, polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose, carrageenan,
Mm.
those all disrupt. And numerous other factors. Microplastics are one now.
Right.
PFAS, the industrial chemicals, the so-called forever chemicals.
Yep.
These all have microbiome disruptive effects. The net effect, Georgia May,
Mm-hmm.
is the marked reduction in beneficial microbes in the colon that
Okay.
were suppressing unhealthy fecal microbes. These are called a big class called proteobacteria. So there's an expansion of proteobacteria, and they oddly have been allowed to ascend into the 24 feet of small intestine. So the jejunum, duodenum, ileum are now infested by fecal microbes. Well, the small intestine is very different. It's not well equipped to deal with that because fecal microbes are very inflammatory, and the small intestine is very permeable. So,
Ah.
Microbes don't live very long. They live for a few hours.
Okay.
So you have trillions of microbes in the small intestine and colon living and dying rapidly. When they die, they shed some of their components, and one is lipopolysaccharide, we say LPS, endotoxin, and that gets into the bloodstream, but specifically the portal vein to the liver, and then to the rest of the body, systemic circulation. So what's the effect of endotoxemia when this happens?
Mm.
The key here is if you understand this basic principle that microbes in the GI tract, especially in overproliferation of these proteobacteria, that get into your bloodstream, both portal vein and systemic, body-wide. It drives blood pressure higher. It triggers de novo lipogenesis, increases triglycerides.
Right.
It raises blood glucose. It causes insulin resistance. It causes inflammation in the liver. It causes inflammation elsewhere, skin, rosacea, psoriasis, eczema, brain. depression, anxiety, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's dementia, joints, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, polymyalgia rheumatica, heart, coronary disease, coronary atherosclerosis, plaque rupture, that's the process of heart attack and sudden cardiac death.
Right.
In other words, the process of endotoxemia has become clear, makes us have to reconsider all we thought we knew about human disease. And in the U.S., I think this is pretty much true in Australia too. It might be slightly different, but at least half the U.S. population now has this process going on. And this is not my speculation.
Yeah.
I know
Is
this
it
with
SIBO?
confidence.
Yeah.
This is SIBO.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to do is look at the several dozen studies that asked a very simple question. In condition blank, what percentage tests positive for SIBO?
Mm-hmm.
So let's put in irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are 60 to 70 million Americans, 60 to 70 million, larger than the population of Australia in the U.S., have irritable bowel syndrome.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God.
So
that says something, doesn't it? Oh, gee.
What proportion will test positive for SIBO? Well, it depends on the study you're looking at, but average about 31%. Well, that's 18 to 20 million people right there with SIBO. How about obesity? Well, there's 110 million, Georgia May, Americans who are obese. What
Right.
proportion tests positive? And these are conservative estimates, 50%. That's another 55 million people right there. Have that same exercise in sleep apnea, rosacea, anxiety, dementia, coronary disease, type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. In other words, down the line of modern human diseases, you easily exceed 100 million, more like 150 million people in this country alone with this problem. So
Wow.
heart disease is just one example.
Yeah.
You can't expect a stupid drug that reduces one crude biomarker to address the entire constellation of factors here. You've got to get at and one of the root causes, of course, is colonic dysbiosis, but even worse, SIBO with small intestinal involvement. But if people start to understand this, the great thing about this, Georgia May, is you don't necessarily need a doctor. That's why in 2015 I wrote a book called Undoctored. I started to realize if you went to your doctor, I don't know your doctor, but just speaking generally.
Yeah.
And you said, I think I have SIBO. I've got irritable bowel syndrome. I've got floating stools. I have weird food intolerances. What's going on? I think I have SIBO. The doctor says, oh, Georgia May, did you consult Dr. Google again? Or,
yes.
No, you don't. You're fine. Or some other BS response, right? So you're left hanging, knowing something is really wrong, and you think you have SIBO. Well, you can address it yourself, safely, inexpensively, effectively. Not to say there is a little bit of hassle and a little bit of expense involved, but it's not a exorbitantly priced pharmaceutical agent. It's not some nasty drug, and it's not done with the obstruction of your doctor. So there are easy, and they're all nutritional strategies. They're all natural nutritional strategies.
I mean, it's so exciting and empowering to feel like you can make so many changes yourself. But I mean, for me, I don't know how correct this actually is, but the visual in my mind of thinking about the state my gut's been over the years, the state it's been in, not good. Thinking about the permeability and thinking like, oh my God, there's actually, I'm assuming like microscopic holes in my stomach and stuff is leaking into my bloodstream. No wonder I feel inflamed. No wonder I'm having sort of this skin issue or this other, the flow-on effect. Is that right? Like if you had a visual for it, is that kind of true? That's what's going on?
Yeah. One of the pitfalls of all this is the ways we document this are kind of indirect methods. For instance, we'll measure hydrogen gas on the breath because microbes, especially in the small intestine, will produce hydrogen gas. But you and I can't produce hydrogen gas. Your listeners can't produce hydrogen gas, but microbes can. Ideally, we would actually measure endotoxin in the bloodstream, lipopolysaccharide, LPS, endotoxin. In the U.S., it's a research tool only. You can't get it done clinically. There's a variety of reasons for that. It'll likely become available in some form in coming months and years. But right now, we don't have access to that test, which is really a problem. So we have these indirect methods, or what
Oh.
I would call empiric methods, that is based on your best judgment. So SIBO has some very reliable telltale signs. For
Yes, what would
instance,
they be?
if you see fat floating in the toilet after a bowel movement, that's from fat malabsorption from fecal microbes in your duodenum, where
Oh, okay.
you're releasing pancreatic enzymes, and the fecal microbes in the duodenum block the activity of pancreatic enzymes and bile. Another one would be if you have food intolerances. All the crazy food intolerance. People say things, I can't eat eggs because they give me a stomach ache. I can't eat nuts. I can't eat FODMAPs. That's that thing from Monash.
Yep.
I can't eat histamine-containing foods. In other words, intolerances that your great-grandmother would say, what? What did you say, Georgia? There's no such thing.
Yes.
Those are all SIBO. And those intolerances almost always, with rare exceptions, go away with correcting the SIBO. There are diagnoses that are so highly associated with SIBO that you can just assume it's SIBO. Irritable bowel syndrome would be one. Even though the average is 31%, the real number is probably much higher than that. A neurodegenerative disorder, a very high likelihood. Fibromyalgia, very high likelihood. Depression, anxiety, very high. Obesity, very high. Type 2 diabetes, ulcerative colitis, Crohn. They're so high that you can safely assume that you at least have dysbiosis, a disrupted microbial composition of the colon, and even more likely SIBO, small intestinal involvement. Because, if I said to you, Georgia May, if I said, okay, you think you have SIBO because you saw floating stools and some fat staining in the toilet, and you got a weird intolerances to 18 foods, you likely have SIBO. What if I said the solution was the surgical removal of your small intestine?
Say no, thank you.
You would say, hit the road, get out of here. There's no way, that's stupid, unless you have concrete, repeated proof that that's true. Well, that's a bad example. Yeah. The solution I've been working on is a microbial solution using something that looks and smells like yogurt.
Yes.
So think about this. So let's say you have SIBO, and you go to the health food store and you buy a commercial probiotic right off the shelf, and you take it. What's the likelihood that this will correct the entire situation? Very low. One of the reasons is commercial probiotics are very haphazardly crafted. They're just they're random collections of microbes. There's no rhyme or reason.
Oh, okay.
At least today. So I asked this question. Well, what if we were very careful in our selection of microbes, and we chose microbes that are missing in the human microbiome because of your exposure to antibiotics and other things, and are known to colonize both small intestine and colon? Very few microbes do that. And produce what are called bacteriocins. These are natural antibiotics, quite effective, by the way, very, very potent. Natural antibiotics that are specific in killing fecal microbes, proteobacteria. So I chose 3 to start. The most recent, it's evolved a little bit over time. A strain of Lactobacillus reuteri, a strain of Lactobacillus gasseri, and a strain of Bacillus subtilis. They stick around the small bowel and colon, and all 3 are magnificent producers of bacteriocins. Bacillus subtilis, for instance, can produce up to 7 different bacteriocins, very potent antibiotics. And now we go a step further. When you buy these microbes, so let's say, for instance, you bought the Lactobacillus gasseri, the strain that works. And forgive me, Georgia, when you play with microbes, there's some value in paying attention to strain. So let's say Lactobacillus gasseri maybe has 100 different strains. Some work, some don't.
Right.
So the strain that we know, one of the strains that we know works is called the BNR17 strain. Now, when you buy it, there's only a few billion, and you're expecting that few billion to go up against hundreds of trillions.
Oh.
So what we do is we make it into like a yogurt-like. It's not yogurt. It looks and smells like yogurt. But in other words, we're going to ferment it in dairy for 36 hours. and let it double at least 12 times. That's how microbes reproduce. They don't have sex. They just reproduce.
Right. Yep.
So we let it double 12 times or more, 36 hours. When we count the number of microbes, we get around 300 billion. So now we're talking big numbers. So we do that with Lactobacillus reuteri, Lactobacillus gasseri, and most recent version is Bacillus subtilis. It used to be Bacillus coagulans. Very great microbe, but it was unreliable in fermentation dairy. We got wild, wacky numbers. So the subtilis is much more reliable. And we used to co-ferment all three, and that did work for most people. But if you really want the biggest effect, we independently, each one separately, and consume a quarter or half cup of each per day, minimum of 4 weeks. And that so far has worked huge. It has been hugely effective. I've been trying to get the funding to do a formal clinical trial. We've had some problems with funding lately, so I'm not sure it's going to happen in the near future. But it sometimes looks like yogurt you have with blueberries, Georgia May. That's
so
why
easy. Yeah.
We're not talking about surgical removal of your small intestine. We're talking about something you make in your kitchen you have with some blueberries and chia seeds. And by the way, unlike drugs, these microbes have other benefits, like skin benefits, joint benefits, muscle benefits, mood benefits, and they also help push back SIBO. And so we really need to validate that, but it's been so effective. But one of the problems is the SIBO is not one thing. Some people have it mildly. Some people have it really, really bad.
Yep.
So how long you do this varies. But I think there's also, so most people do it pretty well, 4 to 8 weeks. Some people have to do longer. And I encourage people to probably do it for a lifetime, at least intermittently, maybe 3 times a week.
Yes.
Because we still don't know how to make these microbes take up permanent residence. You know, if your mom gave you reuteri at birth, you would have reuteri for a lifetime if you're not exposed to antibiotics and other things. But if we give you reuteri, say, as this yogurt or probiotic, you'll have it for maybe a week. Well, why? Why the difference? Nobody knows for certain. Probably because we failed to restore the entire community that supports it, and that no one knows what that looks like yet.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's, I guess, constant evolution going on in terms of understanding how to restore the whole community, like that you might have had from birth if you were lucky and mum had a great microbiome. And
You know, one thing we've had a great experience very recently is, I think the situation is the same in your part of the world, and that is commercial kefir.
Right, yeah.
So
I've seen
commercial,
it.
So commercial kefir really shouldn't be called kefir if we compare it to what traditional kefir looks. In other words, if you and I got kefir from somebody who's been doing it for many years, or got it from Romania or Bulgaria or southern Russia where it originated, that would be very different. There's many differences between traditional kefir and this commercial thing. The crazy thing about commercial kefir is they left out the 3 most important ingredients. They left out what are called Acetobacter species. Very important. They left out a species called Lactobacillus kefirinofaciens.
All right.
That's important because it produces a very powerful fiber called kefirin that has antimicrobial properties itself. A fiber, Georgia May, with antibacterial properties. And it left out fungal species, which are important for other. Fungi tend to feed bacteria. So commercial kefir lacks all 3, the 3 most important ingredients. The reason they get away with that, I think it's similar in Australia. The FDA in the U.S. has a formal definition for yogurt. So manufacturers have to meet certain criteria. There's no such requirement for kefir. So you and I could put cocoa in milk and call it kefir. It's not, of course.
Yep.
So one of the things we've been doing is restoring those 3 lost ingredients, the Acetobacter species that you can obtain from apple cider vinegar, the mother.
Right.
We replace the Lactobacillus kefirinofaciens. That one you have to buy specifically from a company that sells it to you. In the U.S., there's only like 2 companies.
Okay.
And then we use Saccharomyces boulardii, which you can buy in most stores in the U.S., a capsule of that, and that adds some of the fungi. And you'll know you have traditional kefir, which is probably the most potent fermented food there is. When you get so-called grains, not wheat grain, not that kind of grains, they look like little cauliflowers because it takes the kefir and the acetobacter and the fungal species to make those little cauliflower-like grains. And you'll know you've done it the right way. I have the recipe in my blog.
I was going to say, I need to put, so there's a link for this, is it? I could put maps in the description if you want to try and make this. Great. Yeah.
Once you do it, have you ever made kombucha?
No.
It's like having a pet. If you have a dog, you got to walk your dog, right?
Yes.
You got to clean up poop.
Yep.
All the response. When you have kombucha or this kefir, it's like having a pet. You got to take care of it. If you go on vacation, you have to, store it a certain way. You have to revive it. So it's it's not that tough.
It's no joke. Yeah. Well, with this in mind, I guess thinking about the kinds of things, that you would want people to obviously and understand more from your books, like the importance of avoiding things that hurt the microbiome, the antibiotics, the ultra processed food, or the series of things there. But if you're trying to sort of actively build it, obviously you'd be having some SIBO yogurt if you can make that at home. Might make this kefir. Are there other kinds of things that in your life and with your patients, when you've worked with patients, I'm not sure if you still practice now, but you know what I mean. Are there things where you're like, right, eat this every day. I think these are the 5 foods. Try and get them in. Or what are the kind of top gut happy foods that you think give you quite a bit of bang for buck?
It's paradoxical, but one of the most potent strategies is to get a variety of fermented foods. So it could be kefir. Kefir is the best.
Yep.
Could be kombucha. Could be sauerkraut, traditional sauerkraut. It could be veggies you sliced, like some radishes, garlic, cloves, cherry tomatoes. Any vegetable, even some fruit and other things, you can ferment on your kitchen counter.
Okay.
You might have to obtain a starter call. Easy trick. Buy a food from the store that you know is fermented. There's a growing number you can just buy. Use the liquid. So if you buy sauerkraut you know is fermented, use some of the brine or the liquid. Add that to your mix of radishes, cherry tomato, whatever, and that will accelerate the fermentation. You'll get fermented foods in a few days as opposed to a few weeks. Or you can buy starter cultures. The traditional way is to rely on the microbes that are resident on the surface of foods. Well, that's a problem because you really need to get organic. It can't be coated in waxes and other things. So there's some easy rules to follow. And you can get this from you can get it from my books, you can get it from my blog, you can get it from other people who do a lot of food fermentation. But the crazy thing, Georgia May, about fermented foods, regardless of the type, is that they provide species like Leuconostoc, mesenteroides, or Pediococcus pentasaceus, or Weisella species. And the crazy thing is these species don't take up residence in your gastrointestinal tract. You consume them, and you poop them out. Well, what the hell good are they?
Come on, hang in there.
Well, it's not quite clear exactly how.
Yeah.
But those species somehow open the door. They cultivate the return of numerous truly beneficial species.
Okay.
And so that's the work of the Sonnenbergs, Erica and Justin, husband-wife team at Stanford. They did some very elegant work to show it's fermented foods that are the key. There's still a role for fibers.
Right.
Like root vegetables, onions, garlic, shallots, legumes, things that have fiber. That also counts too. That helps a lot. But it's the fermented foods that are the cornerstone. And I think at the very top is kefir, but not commercial kefir. And by the way, I should mention, you can start with commercial kefir that has typically 10 or 12 different bacterial species.
Right.
But then we add those missing ingredients, the acetobacter, the Lactobacillus kefirinofaciens, and the fungal species. Now you have something that's approximating traditional kefir.
Right. So making your own fermented foods, kefir, yogurt, fermented vegetables, cabbage, I mean, that sounds like that should be at the front of your mind if you're trying to get your gut in a better spot.
One of the hurdles we run into, Georgia May, is let's say you start with a bad case of SIBO. And you've got trillions of microbes in your stomach, in your duodenum, in your jejunum, in your ileum. Well, now you're introducing things, let's say the SIBO yogurt species, that are antibacterial, and they're going to start killing them. And so one of the problems in this is people will experience so-called die-off. There's a surge in endotoxin. And your listener may say, well, I added the Kefir, or I made the SIBO yogurt, the 3, and I had headaches, nightmares, panic attack. My heart rate went from 65 to 90. I couldn't sleep.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a die-off, which is a surge in endotoxin. So there are a number of ways to deal with that. One way would be cut back on what you're doing and do it very slowly, build up very slowly. Maybe do only one of the microbes in the SIBO yogurt, or do a little bit of Kefir, like a tablespoon.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, because I think I had that when my gut was really messed up. I avoided sauerkraut and stuff because it would bloat. It made me feel a bit bloated. So that makes me, now I could eat it, but I'd forgotten about that time. That would explain that, is it? Sort of, I maybe was going too hard on it, and
So there are some workarounds for us. One would be one binder of lipopolysaccharides is activated charcoal, like 1,000 milligrams in a cap. You can use that for temporary. It's not good for you. It binds nutrients, but you can do it if you're having a terrible panic attack, say, or it's inflaming your joint pains. You can do that temporarily for some relief or cut back.
Right.
Histamine intolerance is the real problem. People, if you have histamine intolerance, you get asthma, skin rashes, agitation, heart rate, all that stuff from eating anything with histamine, like cheese.
Right.
That's a really bad case of SIBO. And people say things like, I can't eat these 43 foods. I mean, awful. It's crippling. And sometimes even the yogurts and the Kefir and fermented foods bring it out. Like rotary actually produces histamine. Histamine is normal, by the way. Histamine is not bad. It's like insulin. Without insulin, you'd be dead. You need insulin. Insulin's not intrinsically bad. Histamine is not intrinsically bad. It's a signal molecule. But when you have too much, weird stuff happens. So that's a situation where if you can't tolerate the fermented foods, you can't tolerate the SIBO yogurt microbes, that's when we use some form of antibiotic. You could do a conventional antibiotic, which is rifaximin, or you could use some of the herbal antibiotics, which are very poorly documented, but there's 2 regimens I know that have had some documentation, some validation. I don't know how available they are for you guys, but in the U.S. it would be a Decandibactin AR and BR, or the FC-Cidal with this biocide. So that's only occasionally necessary. Because what antibiotics don't do, Georgia May, is they kill things. They don't bring back good things. SIBO
kill
yogurt
everything,
and other things, they kill everything.
Right.
The SIBO yogurt and the fermented foods, they help kill the bad things, and they're smarter. They help bring back the beneficial microbes. So first choice would be something like the SIBO yogurt or fermented foods, because they help rebuild, unlike antibiotics. But some people just don't tolerate the rebuilding effort because of the extreme endotoxemia.
I see. So then in those cases, you tend to go hard and kind of blow everything up, maybe with some antibiotics, and then go and reintroduce the good bacteria. Is that what happens for more severe cases?
Georgia May, you may know this. There are so many people with SIBO so bad. They can't eat, 30-some foods. They're miserable. They can't sleep. They've got skin rashes. They sometimes have suicidal thoughts. I mean, they have coronary disease. They have atrial fibrillation. They have fibromyalgia. I mean, this is not just, regular poops. I mean, this has very serious consequences. And yet, sadly, most of my colleagues, the doctors, will just treat symptomatically, right? If you have fibromyalgia, let me give you this awful pain medication. If you have IBS, I'm going to give you an antidepressant. No kidding. If you have coronary disease, let's give you a statin drug to reduce cholesterol. You start to realize what you're being given is a sad, incomplete, inadequate answer to something that's much more complicated, but is something you can address in your own kitchen.
Mm. Oh, no, it's interesting because even when you mentioned about the histamine, there was a period in my life where I was particularly stressed and my gut was in a bad way, and I got really itchy skin everywhere. And then eventually just went away. Nothing would work, right? No cream. No, and I'm like thinking, oh, no, that's interesting. I wonder how much of that is sort of the gut out, that kind of then calmed down. It's just amazing how powerful the nutritional side is. It's exciting and also depressing that so many people don't have access to this understanding of what they can do.
There is a growing number of docs who won't say stupid things to you, like, Georgia May, did you consult Dr. Google again?
Right.
There's a growing number of docs.
Okay.
It's still the minority. There's no question.
Yep.
But it's the word is starting to get around.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, as you can see, is if there's no profit from it, they're not motivated to talk about it. So rifaximin is the one way they profit from it. Docs don't always profit from writing prescriptions, but they do have ways, I can tell you. I know of ways. One way, for instance, is for a doctor group to form their own pharmacy. They own the pharmacy. And so they're highly motivated to write you a prescription for rifaximin or a GLP-1 agonist or a biologic for $4,000 a month, which is very typical in the U.S., because they in effect get a kickback. So there's a lot of that. So I see a lot of my colleagues wildly enthusiastic for this awful class of drugs called GLP-1 agonists because they're getting a huge kickback. If you make $500 every time for each patient, you write a prescription for human nature, you're going to write a ton of those prescriptions because you got a son in college. And you want to take a 4-week vacation in Provence. That's how humans operate.
Oh, and I wanted to ask you, Bill, I know we're meant to finish now. Do you need to bugger off, or could we talk for 10 more minutes? You let me know.
Oh, go ahead, Georgia May. Go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay.
My next stop is a martini.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, okay. Well, no, I was just thinking, because I experienced when my gut's gotten more in order over time. You talk about the relationship in your book, the latest book, about relationship between weight and shape and body and gut health. And I don't know what explains my particular experience, but as I started eating in a way that was clearly, I guess, nourishing my stomach better, I got less hungry. What's that about? Why could I suddenly get from breakfast to lunch, from lunch to dinner? I didn't, I used to, I guess, maybe snack a lot, or I was more hungry. It sort of just felt like suddenly, I wasn't, thinking about food so much. It was just like main meals were enough. I'd snack here and there maybe, but I don't know what's going on in terms of when you think about gut health, metabolism, that just fascinates me, because I don't know if that's part of these shape weight conversation, the way that a healthier gut changes how you actually engage with food. I mean, if that's part of it or not so much. Yeah. Does that make sense?
There's actually a long list of reasons.
Right.
So reducing endotoxemia reduces blood glucose swings. So when you eat food, there's a rise in blood glucose and then a drop. It's the drop that makes you ravenous. Well, as you become more insulin sensitive, you don't get that kind of wild roller coaster ride. So you don't get that ravenous hunger. Another reason is we don't limit fat, and fat and oils are very satiating. Are you wheat and grain free?
I am, yes. Well, because I discovered, yes, well, of course I read your books, but I also found when I started my gut health journey, gluten really messed me up, really hurt my stomach. So I just had to write that off. And then over time, I think I've just ended up not eating wheat in general. But yeah, so that's...
So one of the effects of that is within gluten is a protein called gliadin.
Right.
And humans don't have the enzymes to digest gliadin to single amino acids like other proteins. We break it down into 4 or 5 amino acid long peptide fragments. And these peptide fragments are small enough to enter your brain, and they act as appetite stimulants. And so when you go wheat and grain free, thereby free of gliadin-derived opioid peptides, you're no longer stimulating appetite. So the combination of avoiding gliadin-derived opioid peptides, not restricting fats and oils that are satiating,
Mm.
and some of the microbiome effects, including Reuteri, by the way, which also
Mm.
helps suppress appetite, and some of the other
Right.
microbes too.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're reverting back to the way humans lived. You know, wild living humans who hunt and gather don't have 3 meals a day. There's no way to do that in the wild.
Yeah.
Georgia May, as nice as she is in a modern world,
Mm.
would be living. She's clothing her animal skins on her feet, on her back,
Mm.
grabs her spear, club, or axe, tries to find something she kills, drags it back to camp, roast it over a fire, or go to the river, spear some fish, collect some shellfish, steal some birds' eggs, gather some berries on your way back. Well, you eat that one nice meal and share it with the rest of the people in your group. This is if you're living wild.
Mm. Yes.
You don't
Yeah.
eat 3 times a day. You eat maybe once a day, maybe a little
Right.
of leftovers that you're boiling over a fire later on. That's how humans. And so you and your listeners who do this are reverting back to the way people used to eat. And this idea, you know, it's a real abomination. The dietitians who say eat many small meals every 2 hours all throughout the day. That is the
Oh.
most absurd idea. It's completely contrary to human adaptation. So the rules we follow is, you know, we do all these things,
Mm.
and you eat when you're hungry. And
Isn't
as you
that
may have noticed,
lovely? Eat when you're hungry. It so goes against like all this horrible kind of noise of, you know, diet and restrict this and sort of like eat when you're hungry and eat the fats and oils that taste good. And it's like really kind of lovely. But I
you
didn't
may have
know
noticed
that
that
till.
the feeling of hunger is different also.
Yeah, it's not
That
like
it wasn't that kind of
crave so much. Like I think I've been quite malnourished. I think the way I've eaten in the past, I'm always kind of hungry. Yeah.
you know, people will say, I'm hangry, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
hungry and angry.
Yeah.
And you order your meal at the restaurant, and it's taken more than 10 minutes, and you are angry as hell, right?
Yep. Yep.
And, well, that doesn't happen anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
You eat when you're hungry, and hunger, you may notice, is not that kind of ravenous, gnawing feeling. It's more of a mild restlessness, which makes sense. Because if you were living in the wild and you were hungry, it would mean you'd have to go and find something.
Mm.
You wouldn't.
Right.
There'd be no convenience store. There's no refrigerator. You'd have to go find something, whether it's eggs you steal or fish you spear or a rabbit you kill, whatever. Well, so the restlessness as a proxy for hunger, I think makes more sense than the desperate hunger that modern people feel.
That's interesting. That has shifted the restlessness rather than the desperateness. I mean, what's muscle got to do with it? Because I know you've talked about how, like, if you go on kind of restrictive diets and that sort of thing, it does something to muscle. Like when it comes to shape and body weight, you talk about that in your new book. The way that caring, it just seems really interesting to me that caring for your gut health in the right way. Like people often would think, no, got to eat less to weigh less. So the idea that you eat when you're hungry and it's so counterintuitive to most people. I don't know if you could tell me a bit about that, try and like kind of make that make sense, I guess, to the people going, what? Like, what do you mean? I've got to lose weight. I should eat less. Like, that doesn't make sense. You want me to eat more when I'm hungry? If I eat when I'm hungry, I'll eat all the time because I'm always hungry or something, you know? Yeah.
So yet another one of those blunders we've made as a society. You're right. It seems intuitively makes sense. You cut back calories, you lose weight. Well, it's now clear the science has really matured. And it's clear that any method of reducing calorie intake, it could be a bariatric procedure that reduces stomach volume, like lap band or gastric bypass.
Right.
It could be a diet program where you reduce your calorie intake, which are many, hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a pharmaceutical that makes you indifferent to food and slows stomach digestion.
Right.
Those are all variations of the same theme. They all reduce your calorie intake. We now know with very solid evidence, not my speculation, very solid evidence, there are large databases of people who've been tracked who've lost weight on purpose.
Yep.
So these are not to be confused with people who are losing weight because they have a hidden cancer. not been diagnosed yet.
Right.
But these are people who lose weight. And a lot of these studies, they did this, Georgia May. They said, okay, you're trying to lose weight, but we're not going to enroll you for 2 years in case there's an early hidden cancer. So it takes 2 years even to get in the study. So now there's a total of about 60,000 people. 60,000 people. These are in large databases like the NHANES in the U.S.,
Okay. Wow.
the Epic
Huge.
Norfolk, Western Europe,
Yep.
Astray. These are large databases of people followed for up to 10 to 20 years. People who tried to lose weight by reducing calories by some method, they die several years younger. You die younger. Now, why would that be? Well, we've got to look at some other studies, all done at the NIH, by the way, and others. But they did a study, for instance, to show that. So remember, I don't know if you got The Biggest Loser in Australia.
We
TV
did.
show?
Yes. I do remember as a kid. Yep.
So you may remember people who wanted to lose weight and were struggling were put on these extremely intensive exercise programs, resistance training, aerobic training, and low-calorie diets. And they lost. I interviewed, for instance, Danny Cahill in the U.S. He was the winner of the 8th season in 2015. Georgia May, he lost 239 pounds in 7 months. A heroic effort. This guy was so committed. And at the award event, he looked great. They're all, by the way, wearing Spanx.
Right.
To conceal their loose skin flaps.
Yeah.
Well, he wins the $250,000 prize. He goes home. He tells me he wanted to stay slender, right?
Yeah.
And he kept up a 2-hour per day exercise program 6 days a week.
Oh my gosh.
Resistance training, aerobic, and a very low-calorie diet. Regained all the weight. And he would go back every year to the reunions that the producers of the TV show hosted, and he saw all the other graduates regain the weight. Well, the NIH studied those people. They actually formally measured their basal metabolic rate. We say BMR. It's the rate at which your body burns calories. So they measured it at the completion of the program, and then 6 years later, and these people had 27% lower burn rates, metabolic rates, compared to other people. In other words, by doing a low-calorie program, even coupled with extreme exercise, your basal metabolic rate at which you burn calories, is reduced, and for all practical purposes, permanently. Now, why would this be? It's the loss of muscle. So other studies have quantified the loss of muscle. So typically, when you lose weight, about 25%, give or take, is muscle. Now, that's on top of the muscle you and I lose as we age.
Okay.
We lose 30% or more of muscle as we age. That's why old men have little skinny arms and legs, walkers, right?
Yeah.
So now if you lose weight, it's even worse. So that's the likely explanation for why people who lose weight on purpose by cutting calories by any method will die younger. And the last few years are more likely to be characterized by falls, fractures, frailty, acceleration of cognitive impairment, and then death. So you can see the conventional method to lose weight has been a huge mistake. So the new age is to not lose muscle. Now, docs say to me, I'll tell docs this, my colleagues, they'll say, don't worry. I have all my patients engaged in resistance training. It doesn't work. It may blunt it a little bit.
Okay.
It does not work. So another NIH study, for instance, people with BMIs of 50, so super obese people, likewise, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, extreme exercise, low-calorie diet, they lost 123 pounds. Pretty good. Now, most who lose 25% of their body weight as muscle, in this case, they lost only 18%. So it blunted it, but they still lost a lot of muscle. And their basal metabolic rate was still 27% lower. So it helped. It did not stop the process. So the key is don't follow any program, whether it's bariatric procedure, low-calorie program, a pharmaceutical that reduces calorie intake. There are effective ways to lose weight, like what you're doing. Get rid of gliadin-derived opioid peptides that are appetite stimulants. Correct the endotoxemia that drives insulin resistance and thereby expansion of abdominal fat. There are very logical ways to do this, but there's no money in it. That's the key. That's the key. That's the thing that makes the conventional world go around. If there's a pot of gold, that's what they're going to tell you. If there's nothing for them to gain and you can do it on your own and enjoy a pizza made with non-wheat crust, why would they tell you? How are they going to pay for the $100 billion new addition for the cardiac care unit on your hospital? So it's all about money.
So, I mean, from your point of view, then, I mean, if you're talking to someone who's struggling, like let's say with their gut health and may or may not also be struggling with their weight too, or body shape, or I mean, the message of working on your experience in your gut and how your gut is actually going and how to feed it better. And is that, I mean, from your point of view, the huge message? And then I don't know if you've got I know it's hard, really you should just read your books, that would be the ideal. But like if there was sort of a number of top things, maybe 3 even, like 3 might be sort of 2, not enough, but things that you would say. Oh, yeah, for weight loss, actually, I'm probably more interested in gut health, but then if you correct your gut, sort of then weight issues may improve, right, as kind of a consequence. Is that what you're saying? Would that be somewhere to start? Yeah.
So correcting SIBO, thereby endotox, because SIBO is a major driver of insulin resistance. Your body's inability. So muscle, brain, liver doesn't respond to insulin, and your pancreas compensates by producing huge amounts of insulin. So let's say a slender, active woman like you, we checked your insulin level fasting. It might be 2 microunits per liter. We check somebody who's, let's say another woman who's 225 pounds, right, has a big tummy. Her insulin level is 130.
Oh, okay.
It's 100-fold higher. It's not 10% worse. It's 100-fold worse. Well, that level of insulin causes fat deposition in the abdomen, which in turn makes your liver insulin resistant and sends inflammatory signals to the liver. And that whole process is a vicious cycle that causes weight gain. So we reverse it. We don't eat wheat and grains that fuel liver de novo lipogenesis.
Right.
We take steps to reverse insulin resistance, like address SIBO and thereby endotoxemia, and restore nutrients that, when combined, act synergistically to minimize insulin resistance. There's 4 that are the most important: magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil, vitamin D, and of all things, iodine. Things that sounds random, I know, but they're all things absent or lacking in modern life that also factor into reversing insulin resistance. So when you reverse insulin resistance, weight is released.
I see.
And those 4 nutrients also play significant roles in rebuilding your microbiome.
Right.
For instance, omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, is an activator of what's called intestinal alkaline phosphatase, which is a partial, not complete, but partial inactivating factor in lipopolysaccharide endotoxemia. In other words, it's all related, Georgia May. It's all related. So you can appreciate that doing something as silly and simple-minded as taking a statin drug to reduce LDL cholesterol or a GLP-1 agonist to turn off appetite, these are not even close to being full solutions for health.
Right.
They're, in fact, quite destructive. Or at the very least, take people's attentions away from the things that really would work and cost almost nothing to do.
So, okay, yes. So it's quite an exciting way to look at it, because I suppose having had, obviously many gut issues in my time, and hearing a lot of rhetoric too around, diet and weight stuff that's obviously out there you can't avoid. There's often that idea of stop that or restrict that or do less, or the idea that actually you just need to think about what to add in, like what to nourish more of, what to give, what to restore, what to sort of how to get everything back in balance feels like a much more it doesn't feel so anxiety inducing as an adventure if you're looking after your gut health or your weight, like it rather than that whole kind of fear mongering, restrict the calorie, don't eat this, that's kind of, that's no fun. This is quite different.
This may not seem obvious, but there's a philosophy there's a guiding philosophy behind this.
Mm-hmm.
It took me many years to understand this, and it's real hard for a lot of people to understand. But once you get it, a lot of things fall in place. And that is,
Right.
all we're doing is restoring the human situation to the way it should have been all along. In other words, we're serving the needs that are programmed into your genetic code, developed over millions of years of human adaptation. So in other words, we're not introducing drugs or other exogenous foreign things. We're just addressing your intrinsic genetically coded need. So for instance, let's say you went on a safari in Kenya, and from the jeep you see a lion gore the abdomen of a wildebeest, tear open its stomach and its heart, and there's blood everywhere, and you say, that's disgusting. We're going to cage that lion and feed it human superfoods.
It
like
wouldn't last
carrots,
long.
spinach. Right, it would be dead within weeks. In other words, that lion had a specific style of living and eating programmed into its genetic code. Humans are the same. We have specific needs programmed in our genetic code, and a situation. So we're restoring the situation the way. Now, there's some uncertainties when it comes to the microbiome when we compare the data we have in the Hadza of the Maasai, the people in New Guinea, the Yanomami, and other populations. But put that aside for a moment.
Right.
But what we're doing is we're restoring the human situation to the way it was supposed to be, and wonderful things happen. Because I remind people, if we looked at the Yanomami in the Brazilian rainforest, or the people in the highlands of New Guinea, or the Maori, or the people in Malawi, Eastern Africa, or the Maasai, less so the indigenous in Australia, because there's a bunch of other issues there, right? But if we look at those people, there's no type 2 diabetes, Georgia May. There's no obesity. There's no coronary disease. There's no schizophrenia. There's no ulcerative colitis. There's no colon cancer. There's no hemorrhoids. There's no constipation. There's no Crohn's disease. There's no fibro. Now, they have other problems. They got dengue fever and malaria and injury. But I think there's a lesson in there that we have all these, what the anthropologists call diseases of civilization, that they don't have or extremely rarely have. So that's what we're doing. We're restoring the human situation to something as close to the way it was supposed to have been all along, until silly things like dietary guidelines got in the way. Or ultra-processed foods, or stupid medical advice got in the way and told us things like, cut your saturated fat and everything in moderation. All the false mantras that are at least in part responsible for what's going on in the modern world.
Oh, I mean, the idea of eating in line with your genetic code is fascinating. Yeah, it's so simple at one level, but I wish I knew it long ago. But anyway, catching up now, I know now, and I've been really very lucky to be able to pick your brains on this, just to one-to-one be able to ask all of my questions. Like, I actually could probably ask sort of more, but my main questions I've been able to speak to you about today. So I really appreciate you making the time, Bill.
Well, you can see, Georgia May, that, there's a little bit of complexity, but once you understand some of the basic concepts, that we're not treating. You and I didn't say, let's treat high blood glucose. Let's treat high blood. That's not what we're doing. We're restoring the human situation. Like, for instance, those Yanomami, they don't have high blood pressure. Their average blood pressure, systolic, is 95.
That is fascinating.
And there's no age-related increase in blood pressure. Well, there's a lesson in that. Because, in the U.S., the blood pressure experts say hypertension is inevitable as we age. Well, no, it's not. It's inevitable if you eat like other people do, if you live your life like other people do. But if you live your life the way it's supposed to, more likely than not, you will not have high blood pressure or any of the other hundreds of other problems. But this can be a self-directed effort. You've done it a lot on your own. I'm sure if the doctor did anything, they probably got in your way. And that was my motivation, by the way, for writing the book Undoctored, that I tried to impress on people. You know what? If you have a doctor who's supportive and knowledgeable, that's great.
Yes.
But sadly, 9 times out of 10, they just get in your way.
So lucky there are resources available to be learning about this, like our talk today and your books, and
that's why we do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for now, we'll finish together, Bill. But thank you again for sharing all your wisdom with me, and just beyond grateful and quite chuffed that you were willing to speak with me in this small podcast. I'm very
well. Thank you, Georgia May, because word needs to get out. And it has to come from nice people like you.
Thank you. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Gut Girl Podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time as we learn more real-world strategies for gut health, one bite at a time. If you want to keep learning more outside the podcast episode, head to the Gut Girl Podcast resources page, where you can discover more about your gut and all that it connects to. Everything you've heard today is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional medical or psychological care. While I am a registered psychologist, this podcast is not providing psychological services. Always seek medical advice from your qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, medications, or treatment plan. I do not necessarily endorse all the views and statements of podcast guests, and myself and the guests are not aware of your individual circumstances. Any advice given is general in nature.